So with that, that has taken us halfway through our meeting approximately, and I'd like to welcome the chair of LINX, Pieter Knook, who will be speaking about being a member of the LINX board. And that presentation looks great, so please go ahead, Peter.
Good, yes, thank you. I needed unmuting. Yes, so from this wonderful depth presentation of Richard and Ricardo's, we're now going to a completely different area with the governance topic on the board, and particularly what we do on the board and what it's like to serve, and perhaps if you are interested, to entice you to come and join our board, since we have some elections coming up in May. So these are 4 topics, and then I'm going to go into the elections process and how that works. First of all, who we are. Well, we're comprised of a select group of people. As you will see, it is a group of mostly white males, which is one thing we would like to address over time, if we get that opportunity. We have 1 chairman, that's me. We have 6 elected non-executives, 2 of which are up for election in May, forthcoming elections. We have the CEO, Curtis, who is an appointed official on the board, and we have 3 executive directors, Richard, Malcolm, and Malcolm. So that's who we are. The non-execs are obviously re-elected, or they can serve up to a maximum of 3 terms, each term lasting 3 years. So what is the purpose of the board? What do we do? Well, we're obviously responsible for making the strategic and policy decisions that steer the overall direction of LINX and for the oversight and good governance of the company. That's what it says on our website. So the strategy oversight, that's important because we need to make sure that the ideas that Richard just presented, for example, on moving up to 400 gigabyte ports and how we handle that and the strategy for which vendors we pick for that, that's obviously an important topic that we discuss on the board. Equally, the recent unveiling of our new pricing strategy is obviously a big strategic topic that we did spend time on at the board as part of our strategic oversight. Good governance is another key area. We want to make sure that the membership is effectively represented on the board and that we are making decisions and overseeing the business in the best possible interests of the members. So we are there to represent the members' interests and to ensure that executive management is steering the company in the right direction. And lastly, we have an important sort of legal responsibility, as any directors of any company do, which is to make sure that the accounts are an accurate representation of our situation as a company, and that we are making sensible and practical decisions about where we spend that money and how we record it, particularly how we account for it. So that's the fiduciary responsibility, which is our most important regulatory and legal requirement. So what do we decide? Well, obviously we decide in the domain I've just discussed. So we discuss strategy. We don't necessarily decide, but we support the strategy that the company represents. We do decide on, for example, things like approving the statutory accounts. We approve the budget for the company, so the limits within which the spending parameters are set. Those things are all sort of proposed by the executive management team, and the board's job is to approve and question and monitor how we do with those things. Pricing structure would be another key topic. We've got rather used to having annual discussions about price reductions. That's continued this year, and obviously we've also proposed, or the management has proposed, and the board has adopted and supported a proposal to the members to change the pricing structure so that we distinguish between the port fees and the peering fees. The 4th area is around changes to the MOU, and the MOU is certainly super important because it is the key document by which the members have a say over what the company, what the organization does. And on occasion, we have to change that. We have had to change a couple of things, for example, to allow us to properly manage our AGMs in the era of online working. That required some changes to the MOU. Similarly, we've proposed some things to deal with what happens when we get people who might be disruptive to the way we work with them. So there are things like that where the MOU has to be updated and changed, and obviously they always go to the membership, but first they get scrutinized and supported by the board. And the last point is the strategic direction of the company. Obviously, there's a lot of discussion on this topic. It typically starts with a view of what's going on in the outside market, what are peers and competitors doing? We get some views on that. What are our clients and customers thinking about the developments in the market? And all of that then culminates in a view of what should our strategy be to participate in this new market, and what does this mean? So that's more than just a presentation by management to the board. I think the board rolls up its sleeves and really gets quite involved with developing and ultimately then articulating what this strategy is, which normally gets presented to the LINX membership meeting on an annual basis. So the board helps decide some of these things. We have a stronger fiduciary responsibility for things like the accounts, which have to be formally approved, but we also get involved with some of these other topics. And at that point, obviously, individual board members have individual contributions they can make to the topic concerned. So in addition to what we decide, we obviously have a number of discussions, First of all, on the people front, we want to make sure that LINX continues to be a healthy organization. We've seen by and large that our employees are quite happy, that we've managed the transition to a mixed way of working quite well, and we've been monitoring that quite carefully. So all those things that concern the well-being of our employees, factors that concern the development of our people, of our management team, and how we continue to invest in the right areas there. So that whole people agenda is worthy of a lot of discussion. We actually have a separate board committee that obviously also discusses the REMCO, the compensation of people, but it goes slightly broader and looks at people well-being in more general terms. We spend a lot of time discussing what goes on with the market. So more recently, we had discussions on 5G. We've had discussions on the evolution of peering. We get into, each board member has a pretty unique perspective, both because of the companies they represent, but also because of their experience, which really helps us get a broad view on where we think the market's going and what we think LINX should do to respond to those things. The third area is about departmental roadmaps. So each of the departmental leaders has a view of what they're going to commit to achieve over the course of the year. That's articulated in a document called the Departmental Roadmap. We spend a fair bit of time discussing what those are and what the individual groups are committing to achieve over the course of the year. Ultimately, of course, the executives ratify that, but with input from the board. Fourthly, and Nurani gets quite involved with this particular topic, but it's all to do with the partnerships, both with the other exchanges, but also with potential exchanges we might run in other geographies or in other parts of the world even. So the Saudi connection, obviously, but equally what's going on in Scotland, Manchester, or other geographies where there might be partnership opportunities. And that's an area we continue to discuss as we evaluate where we think we need to take LINX. And I would say the last topic is a pretty critical one. It's around the risks that we face as an organization. So where do we go? How do we avoid pitfalls? I think we've mentioned TSRs in the Q&A a little bit. That's an important area of risk mitigation. How do we correctly satisfy the regulatory authorities that we're doing all the things that we're supposed to be doing, and where we are at risk of being regulated into doing certain things? Obviously, we have areas like health and safety that we have to be cognizant of, particularly when COVID pandemics potentially affecting our operation of key things like the knock, or even just getting access to physical premises when that's required. So that's been a particular area of concern. Similarly, we worry about geopolitical risk. We worry about the potential for cyber threats, and obviously those areas are key for the risk assessments that we do on behalf of LINX. And the TSR is one of the mechanisms we use to try and mitigate against some of these risks. But these are all things that we discuss at the board. Sometimes we discuss it for the board as a whole, and some of these topics get delegated to individual committees. Obviously, we have a compensation committee that talks a lot about the people topic. We have an audit and risk committee that talks about the detailed financial aspects of approving the audit and working with the auditors. And we have a governance committee that works with changes to the MOU or to the governance structure that we might need. So those committees will perhaps take a topic and work on it in more detail, and then report back to the main board to present what their findings are, and if we as an overall board need to take action on any of those topics, we will. So let me then turn briefly to the elections. We set up last year an elections committee, and this is a practice I've seen in multiple different organizations, but it's basically to help promote people who might not otherwise think of standing, so that we get the broadest possible pool for people who need to be elected or want to be elected onto the board. I'll also talk quickly about the kind of skills that we're looking out for, and finally close off with how to stand. So the election committee consists of a small group of people, as you can see listed below here, and we're very grateful for their efforts in reaching out to members. So if you do have questions as a member and you're thinking of standing for a board, these might be people you want to talk to, and they can tell you about what it's like. Equally, you could talk to me, you can talk to Curtis, you can talk to any of the other existing board members, so don't feel shy about reaching out to understand exactly what it's like to be on our board. And as I said before, we've got 2 board seats that are up for the elections in May at the AGM. And obviously those those board members are representative of the membership. They have to be voted on by the members, that's the whole point. But we would encourage anybody who perhaps hasn't thought about standing to do so, and really to give you a good sense of what we do. I'll give you a sense of the time commitment here in a second as well. What we look for in skills, I mean, like any board, we expect people who can help us with the topics that I've highlighted. So to delve into strategy to help its development, obviously to make sure that we're on the right track from a corporate governance point of view, that we're not shortchanging any of the constituencies that we're beholden to, particularly the membership. Some degree of technical expertise to scrutinize what we're trying to achieve there. An ability in the communications field to be able to understand how to articulate what the board does, both to the members that we ultimately represent, but to the wider world. The understanding of our members so that you can correctly represent them in a board meeting, because that is your task as a director. And of course, to stand for issues where you have a strong point of view and express your leadership on that particular topic, but not at the expense of being able to work as a team, as a board, and be able to drive the business forward in a constructive manner. So those are generic skill sets, I think, that would be very helpful in any board, but certainly for the LINX board. Additionally, we certainly could do with even more finance and audit experience. We're always short of people who have certainly certified accounting experience. Not that that's necessarily a prerequisite, but that would be helpful. The industry knowledge, and particularly the international experience, because we do have a lot of international members in the LINX group, and we don't directly have representation for that international constituency. And lastly, we see a focus on the people management aspect, particularly in the people committee, the REMCOM, where experience of managing organizations and the people infrastructure would be extremely helpful. The commitment that we expect a board director to make is 8 to 12 meetings a year. Normally we schedule 8, but I say 12 just in case there are special things that happen. Usually those meetings take place in London, although we've held obviously a lot of those meetings online, and we will probably continue to hold some of our meetings online, so they aren't all physical. In addition, the quarterly LINX meetings, we expect board members to participate in those. And of course, then there might be ad hoc calls and meetings in addition, based on topics that may arise, issues that may come up or whatever. We expect board members to be either free from conflict of interest or be very articulate in declaring those. I mean, clearly every board member who is also a member already has at least one conflict because they are representing their particular member, but at the same time expected to represent all members when they're on the board. And lastly, to make sure that if you are employed by a member, that that organization actually supports you, spending the time and the effort being part of the LINX board. This URL, and you can easily search for it on the LINX website, gives you a real view of the actual process. You need to get nominated, and then you can stand in the LINX AGM, which takes place in May, and there's a formality for how you get yourself nominated and the kinds of statements you need to make to articulate what you stand for to the membership. And I think Holly's just posted that link into the chat. Thank you for doing that, Holly. So that's really all I had to say. I don't know if there are any other questions. I'll wait a second for anybody to type in to the chat or raise their hand in some other way. If not,
I know that there's one question that I get quite often, and that's actually the eligibility for standing, whether or not you need to be a member of LINX or just nominated by a member. That's a question that I've heard quite a lot. So if you could clarify that.
I think you need to be a member to stand. Malcolm Hutty, I don't know if you can.
The members of LINX are companies, and so none of you are going to be a member. Technically, a company is capable of being a director of a company, but that's not what happens in this case. We're looking for individuals. So in order to be nominated to be a director, what we are expecting is that you are proposed by a member of the company, by a member of LINX. Now, your relationship to that member could be as an employee, it could be as a contractor or a consultant or just someone they trust.
Yeah, thanks for that. And apologies, Peter, I didn't mean to put you on the spot there,
but
I know
that's
it's come
fine.
up a lot, so it's good to clarify.
Well, I think Seb and Steve Wright have also helpfully amplified Malcolm's answer. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Fabulous.
Back
Thank
to
you very
you,
much,
Rani.
Peter.